Hey everyone, Trey here, and I decided to do a video to talk about writing. Before anything, I just need to give a few disclosures before I go on with the video because, first of all, I'm not a professional writer. I have no higher level background in writing. I never read any instructions or any kinds of tips anywhere before, so this is just my own experience of just writing on lockdown and finding this new hobby for myself. So basically, to organize myself, I just used my own background in design and planning and my taste for creative hobbies. So that's how I made my writing method, I guess. Second thing is that this is for amateurs like me, not for professionals. I'm not here to give a lecture because I have no background in this. And as I'm making this video, I haven't written anything that is fully original. So that's right, I'm a fiction writer. It's just something, again, that I started to do during lockdown, just because I guess I wanted to try something new and I had the opportunity. And I truly found a passion in it. And I do want to pursue it further and eventually write more original material. And I will talk more about my particular fanfiction at the end of the video. Third, I won't be talking about grammar in this. I am not a native English speaker, and I had to do some extra research on all language rules and things like that when I started writing myself. And I'm still very new at this, and this is my second language, so I'm just completely unqualified to talk about English grammar. And if you ask me why I'm writing in English, the answer is very simple. It's just that I can reach more people that way. And for last, again, as a fiction writer, my last disclosure is that I won't specifically give tips on world or character building, since I need to try that myself first and then do a video about it. But I will talk about world and character development, since, again, as a fiction writer, that's something you can extensively do. So let's begin! And when I mean successfully, I don't mean as in, oh, this book / play / script earned said writer millions or billions of monies. I mean successfully as in the ability to you yourself say, yes, this is exactly the story that I wanted to tell. That's right here, fully realized, that's what I wanted. So that sense of success. So my first tip, and this is very important, is knowing the end. You know, when you were a kid and you get those cardboard boxes with mazes, and then you just do the very basic thing of solving the maze by going to the end and then making your way back to the beginning, which is just the easiest thing to do. It's much easier than trying to figure out the other way. I did that a lot. Every time that I got like a cardboard box, like with drawings like that, I always do that. And for me, when I did my fan fiction, I knew exactly what I want to end at. That's what motivated me to do it. So I just worked my way backwards from that. Of course, you don't have to know every little detail of your ending, but you need to know where you are going. If you don't know, you're just gonna get a lot of creative block. You're not gonna finish your story properly. And it might be very frustrating. So again, when you've done all your building, and I don't really have that much experience in world building, but once you have a basic skeleton structure of your characters and your basic world and what you want the ending for this to be, then make your way back. Basically, that's very important. Now again, when I say know the ending, I don't mean every single line of dialogue of characters that you haven't even made yet, but just, I mean, as you know the purpose of it, know the message, know everything that you wanted to tell before you start. That's just, it's gonna make everything else easier. Now my next point is overall planning. Again, very similar to what I said before, kind of fits together. So there will be a big word that I will use multiple times in my planning, and it's the key to all this, and is development. Not only story development, but character development. Without any sort of development, a story just dies. It just becomes uninteresting, just boring. And character development is key for you to create memorable stories. People need to connect to a story and follow the characters' journeys. If your audience doesn't care about your characters, they will quickly forget your story, which I would say is the biggest problem with Hollywood today. I will talk specifically now about my own little planning. I will give you the skeleton of what I made, and I made this in the first day when I started writing. Again, I am a fiction writer, which means I didn't have to spend time building the world was already there. I did add characters to it, and I did add specific scenery. I did add things that weren't there, and I could talk about it in another video, but a lot of it was already decided. The time where it would be set, like the gives you the idea of the culture and what is going on, and just the style for most of the characters, and a lot of characters were already built. So that part I already had it done, and I already had the idea of what I wanted to do towards the end. So now was the point of getting there. And in one day I just sat down to create this little system of how to organize the story that I wanted to tell. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. So I need to talk about overall arcs. That's very important. In my case, I divided my story in 3 overall arcs. That I didn't do that at first. I will talk about that in a second. But in the end of my planning, I had 3 arcs, 21 chapters, and basically each arc had 7 chapters. So that's how we get to 21. That's just how I decided to split my story. Of course, you set your own according to the amount of story that you want to tell and how long you foresee that you will need in each part of your story. So that's where I got arc 2 for me. But at first I had these 2 bits of the story, and I quickly realized that I needed time. I did that only in a day because I needed to get that out of my head, and I'll get this also in a second, talk about just wanting to finish. And so I did all that in one day, and I quickly realized as I was putting this together that I needed a second arc to kind of really make that development point. So in the first arc, I'm introduced a bunch of ideas that will be very important to the end and the ending. And then from there, I would go to this big. So if you are if you are listening to this, and you are reading my fanfiction, you know I probably comment on that. But basically, the chapter 7 ending, it would start to the beginning of chapter 15, which is not released yet. basically it would be like everything that happens in the second arc, it wouldn't exist, and it would just go from that little moment at the end of that chapter 7, to what it would be chapter 15. So how the big cliffhanger that I left in chapter 14, it didn't exist, but that how it was left there, that's how I was going to go. Now, if you're a reader, if you're a reader of my fanfiction, you know that it doesn't make any sense, because I mean it does, it can happen, but a lot of the development that I did for this whole story I did in arc 2. So it would be so much, it would just be a bad thing, because no one would understand a thing. So basically I pretty early on made the decision to add this arc to develop everything, because if I didn't do that, the story would be just so much nonsensical. And not even that, is that I needed for these specific characters that I introduced to have more meaning, and I needed to give them the space to grow, because if you don't see a character grow in the story, you will lose interest in them. So going back to my planning, now I had 3 arcs. I had increased the number of chapters to 21, and I will have 7 chapters in each arc. So that's my overall thing. Then I stopped to do a little bit of a sum up of each arc. I only have 1 sentence. One day I'll probably release it. About this week when I finish, I will release these sentences. So basically this is 1 sentence about just summing up what is going to happen in arc 1. Then another sentence about just arc 2, then this is what's happening in arc 2. And then arc 3, the big finale, of course, this is going to happen. Then this, it's just 1 sentence, it's very small. It's just like at the very beginning of my planner, it's right there. Whenever I'm writing, this is my guide, it's like, okay, this is done, now we're going to do this. Very simple, just 1 line, just to remind yourself, so you can keep focus on the message, on what you are trying to tell, the story that you are trying to tell. So after that, I have the MCs, or the main characters. Now those main characters I made myself. They are technically not in the story. Again, I'm writing fanfiction, it's a world that I already built, characters that I already built, but those are my characters that I made. So I just made this next part with character 1, and then in this section of the text I explain the development of this character in arc 1, what happens to this character in arc 1. Then I feel just a bit of the development in arc 2 and in arc 3, and then I went to the next character. I have 4 main characters, and I did the same thing. This is the development of this character in arc 1, the development of this character in arc 2, the development of this character in arc 3, and how they end, how it all ends for each character. Then I did the same thing for character 3, development in arc 1, development in arc 2, development in arc 3. Same thing for character 4. Development in arc 1, development in arc 2, development in arc 3. So basically, as I said before, development is a big word here, because I need those characters to grow. They physically grow in my story, they also, again, because time passes, it's not like a stationary thing. So they physically grow, they mentally grow, there's a lot going on, but you need the characters to drive your story. If you don't do that, again, it becomes boring. And yes, it's fine to have characters that just react to everything else, but in the past few years in Hollywood movies, I see a lot of, like, especially big action and big blockbuster type movies, you see that characters usually, they don't have much of, it's not that they don't have personalities, but they usually just react and react and react to big things happening. And you won't care. I mean, the world can be ending on those big blockbusters, but you won't care if those characters are not interesting, if you don't see them develop, if you don't connect with them. So basically, that's why it's at the very beginning of my planning here, I have the basic structure of each arc, like what's going to happen in each arc and what's going to happen to all of my main characters in each of those arcs. I need that. That's my guide. Now after that, I need to put a disclosure here. Another disclosure. My fanfiction is very time travel, like heavily time travel based. So, and even if it wasn't, I have a timeline after this. So after I talked about my characters, so I won't forget their development, their personality, how they will react to each arc. I have done my calendar because I need to know in order what's going to happen. Even though it's time travel, so there's a lot of going backs and forths. I have a calendar in order, and ever since like I finished 2 arcs, I am currently writing the 3rd arc. But if you go to the website, we're going to talk about this later. I have a timeline in order of arc 1, and I have a timeline in order of arc 2, so people can see basically if they get confused, which can happen because it's time travel. But even if it wasn't, having your timeline is very important. So here you again, all of this is without any. At that point that I made this, I didn't do any dialogue. It was just this. Okay, I want this to happen. This, like year something. This happens. Year that this happens. Like I will just pass the years and each thing. Like what happens is each thing. Like someone dies this. Someone is born this year. Again. I had some of those things already done because it's a story that it had been written before. I am just writing fan fiction about it, which is really fun. So a lot of those points in the timeline in my calendar are things that are canon, I guess. But most of them are things. You can even see that when I posted on my website, like that stuff. That stuff is canon. And then the stuff that you just read on I assume people read it before they see the timeline. But that's the stuff that you see, like, in order. After the calendar, I had a specific point, and it was just outlines for the main romance story in my, like, the main development of that romance. Because that's a tragic story, and it's also very interesting to develop for me, so just to not lose focus, since it is a very important part of the story, I had this outline and some drafts that I had made, and I'm going to talk about my drafts later. And then this is something recent that I added. It wasn't in like the beginning of my planning, but I realized that I kept writing dialogue for them, so I had this little outline and drafts, like, so that I won't forget it in each point what happens, and just to keep track of their development as a couple, I guess. Now this one, it was really fun for me because I got to check a lot of boxes. And it was the timelines, basically the calendar. Again, the first calendar was pretty simple, but this is a very specific timeline for each arc. Basically, a much longer, more detailed calendar of every arc and the timeline of each arc. And like, again, there's no dialogue here. It's just basically, it's not even scenes. It's just this event happens. Point. This event happens. This event happens. Again, I did this because I am dealing with time travel in my story, so I need to make sure that I'm not creating plot holes. But it is like, I feel like if you have a simpler story that doesn't have that much going around, messing up timelines, I guess you just need one calendar, like, and then I guess a little bit more specific, because my first calendar was kind of broad, like everything that is fixed, I guess, and then the other one is like everything that happens in different timelines, in different arcs. So basically, arc 1, timeline 1, calendar, arc 2, timeline 2, calendar, arc 3, timeline 3, calendar. So it's much more specific. And again, I can't show you because first, you probably don't even know the fandom that I'm writing for, and maybe, and also very spoilery, so I'm not gonna show you, but I'm just explaining it. So with what we can get from now is that I have the overall arcs and what's going to happen in each arc, then the overall characters, the main characters, and their development in each arc. Then I have a calendar to everything that happens in the whole thing, like basically the fixed points in time, the fixes points in time, and then I have specific timelines, because of course my story is a bit complex timeline wise. So but you don't need to do that complexity. But having the arcs explained and the characters explained is very important. Then after that, I have my chapter by chapter explanation. So that's just the key. I already have the amount of chapters that I want. I already have the amount of arcs that I want, and the development in each chapter. And now I need to see everything that's going to happen in each chapter. Again, none of this is dialogue. This is just this happens and this happens in this chapter. And then that's when I also name my chapters. I have said before, like if you are again a reader and if you're seeing my website, I talked about how I named all in one go, and it was all this, like doing this. I had to name the chapters so I could have like the key. So when I come back to it, I remember, okay, this chapter is focused on this. This chapter is focused. So basically that's why I named chapters. Some people don't name chapters, but I did because I wanted to really remember when I came back to it. I mean, I've been writing this for like over a year now, so it's very helpful to have those chapter names. So basically it was this arc 1, and then I gave a name to the arc, so it basically overall was like what it means, and then the name of the arc, and then I divided my 7 chapters of each arc in parts, in 3 parts. So basically the first part of my arc has 2 chapters, and each chapter is like, they kind of go together, they are paired together. And then the second part of my arc also has 2 chapters, again paired together. And then the third part is like the finale of the arc, so you have 3 chapters. And again, I gave name to those parts too, so I can basically tell what's going to happen in those pairs of chapters, and then at the end 3 chapters. But the very last chapter, even though it is included in this specific part, is usually kind of further apart from the other 2. The other 2 have a specific theme, and then the last one is like the big finale. So let's just break down again development. Each arc has 3 parts and 7 chapters, and then the first part is a character story introduction, and then the second part is the development, and then the third part is the big finale. I usually like, because again, I don't know if I had said this, but I'm doing this for Attack on Titan. So one of the things that I also did in the big finale is going back, because that's something they do a lot. I think that's an anime thing as well. Is going back to like, I have flashbacks on those chapters because I just feel like that's like a vibe of the show. But beyond the flashback, there's also like a big action piece. Everything happens in those, like that third part, like those last 3 chapters. I did this twice already. I did the first arc this way, the second arc this way, and just to give names. And since this is about time travel, the third arc that I'm working right now, I have 3 names for the parts. The others of course have to, but these I'm working right now. And the names are, the first part is the future, the second part is the past, and then the third part is in between. I can just show you the names of the other parts, because that's none of those are spoilery. Now, to talk about something else that's really important, another tip is write slowly and know your pacing. Now that I'm gonna tell you my whole process and how I end up, or how I am now, how I got here. Sometimes we have those very inspired hours when we cannot stop writing. And I've had a few of those. And the worst one was when I was writing for 3 days. Basically non-stop, I couldn't stop. I didn't leave home, but let's just consider that this was during lockdown, during the pandemic, so it was fine. I was trapped home. I would only stand up to use the bathroom and to eat. And actually, side note, I want you guys to tell me if any of you ever did this, but I like to pace around the house. As I rehearse dialogues in my head, I like to do that. I don't talk out loud, I just think about dialogues in my head. So I do that walking, back and forth, like walking around the house. And I usually go down to the kitchen to drink water. So basically, I would do that a lot, not just sitting. I would just stand a lot and then think about things, and then drink water, come back, like walk around, and then. But I would just write and write and write, and I wouldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep because I wanted to finish. I was afraid I would forget, so I would just do those crazy sprints, like 2 days. The worst one was 3 days, but usually it was like at least 24 hours just without sleep, and that was clearly being very bad for me because I wasn't sleeping. So after I got that, like it was like 24 hours, and then sometimes it was 48 hours, and then I got that to that point where it was like 3 days without sleep, just writing, and just I stood up a few times, but it wasn't enough. It was just making me too tired afterwards. After I realized it was just terrible behavior, and it obviously influenced everything else of going around in my life. So I decided to take a few measures to write slowly. And it is okay to write slowly. I'm gonna explain it. First, I decided to just keep up with my small notes. Like, I've talked about this before, I have drafts, and it's something that I did from the beginning. I have the notes on my phone. I would just, whenever I'm walking around, taking a bus, just walking outside of my house, away from my computer, and I have ideas come, which happens a lot, I just summarize them down, like very, not in much detail, but just summarize them on my notes on my phone. And then if I start to have this crazy feeling again of, here I go again, writing all night long, I just stop, and again I write the summarized version of all these dialogues that are floating through my head the best I can. They don't go into much detail, and then I just write it. I extra side notes about the scenes, and then just everything, just a skeleton of it, so I can fully write later. I don't just keep going like I did before. Having the organized plan, like the guide that I explained before, and then these extra dialogue notes and extra scene notes that I write throughout the day, at many instances, including in the bathroom, it's enough for me to just stop. If you put all that together, it serves well for you to organize your time. So going back to when I started writing Changes, and yes, that's my fixed name, I would go in these crazy writing sprints and write about 7,000 words or up to 12 to 14,000 words chapter in just only 1 week or so. I just feel like my fear was that I would forget things, so I would just kept writing. I got to the point of 14,000 words in this crazy sprint that I wrote in like 11 days, like 1 chapter in 11 days. And I finally stopped doing that and made the effort to remove that sleepless habit. And I started to use this extra note system that I just explained. I decided to take only 2 or up to 3 hours a day to write. And I also don't write every day. Again, I am not a professional writer. This video is directed to people like me who take writing as a hobby. Now this goes from person to person, but I enjoy writing at night before I go to sleep, and this means like 11 p.m. That's my limit. Sometimes, like on Saturdays and holidays, I might take my time during the morning or during the afternoon, but I usually take it at night. And then again, it's very rarely that I write for consecutive days. I usually write for 2 days maybe, and then I stop and take 2 or 3 days, like 2 or 3 day break. And that really helps me to go back to the text and see mistakes and rewrite things, and also have some extra fun with the dialogues and add even more little references, which is something that I really always enjoy doing. To sum up, this more laid-back strategy really improved my daily life and my routine, but also made this writing moment more conscious since I am sleeping better, and a lot more fun since I look forward to it. And I'm also paying extra attention to the text and just sending away a chapter without properly reviewing it after just a few crazy sleepless sprints. But the one thing that I am more proud of in this writing slowly method is how deeper I was able to get with each chapter since the habit change. I would say consistency is the key word here. The chapters are now consistently written in around a month, and they consistently have in between 18 to 22,000 words, with the exception being one chapter that is 16,000 words. Which brings me to my last writing tip. Always write the amount you need. Don't write more and don't write less. My chapters vary in length, like widely vary in length. And that's completely fine for me, honestly. When I first started writing and joining forums and things up like internet things about writing, mostly Discord, I wanted to see what other writers might have to say, what kind of things they talked about. And I noticed pretty much like all Discord servers that I was joined in had this thing of people telling others their writing goals for the day or for the week. It was just like, hey, today I wrote 2K, like 2K words, like 2,000 words, or 4,000 words, or 10,000, 10K, 20K, you know, that kind of thing. And I don't think that that should be a writer's main focus. We're not running a marathon or counting calories. Writing is a creative activity. Artists don't count how many lines they've drawn. Not musicians count how many notes they wrote. But I get it, you want to show what you have achieved in a way. But as I was talking before, the amount of writing in one section shouldn't really be an achievement, at least not as much as the quality of what you wrote. My chapter numbers are uneven. It's definitely clear though that I write more now that I've gained experience. Like my chapters, they've grown in word count. But if you go back to my plan, I don't really count the amount of words in my scenes or in my chapters or arcs. I don't count them. I don't even count how many scenes I put in a chapter. There's probably a part into it since I feel like I have a rhythm of writing, but I don't know the amount of scenes in each chapter. I just know that I need this scene because this is important. I need that scene. But I never stop to count them, and I don't know specifically how many words are in each scene. I have no idea. I just know that that's a scene that I wanted for this purpose. That's why it's here. That's why in this chapter I needed to build it. Basically, I'm building a wall, which is complete fun because I'm writing about Attack on Titan. But I need specific scenes. I don't need to know, like, I don't need to count. Like, I don't sit down and say, oh, I need 2K words today. I write because I need the scene to present this other thing and then the other thing, and I'm building it. So I'm building everything. I don't need to count how many. So just to explain it better, when I first started doing this, and because I was just sprinting, writing really fast, I just wrote like a chapter that was 3,000 words. But going back to that chapter, I think it's 4,000 words. That's exactly what I wanted to tell in that chapter. That's all. I'm not, and then I said before, even though I have chapters that are 21,000 words, I have that one that is just, I think, 4,000. But I'm not going to write more into it because that's the story that I want to tell in that chapter. And it doesn't matter that it's smaller than the rest of it. I'm not really doing this for the amount of words or characters in it. I'm doing it for the characters in it. Get it? The important thing really is the story and how you are conveying the story. So don't get hung up on numbers. That will only get you stressed and eventually just get that big creative block. So to finalize, I'm going to give you some tips for inspiration. But that's just the best part, I feel. So how to inspire yourself and get rid of blocks. So basically, first one is read. Reading other books is good for your vocabulary and to inspire you to keep writing. Don't worry about stealing anything. You don't even have to read books on the same topic. You don't even have to read books about narratives. You just read. We are always reproducing stuff that we've seen before, especially when you love something. It's going to be in the back of your head. That's absolutely fine. What you can't do is just copy paste things. that's a no. See and or watch. Art galleries are cool, and so are museums. I don't know why dumb people try to convince others otherwise. And you can see artistic pieces online now, so there's no excuse not to get inspired by them. And watching good films, series, and animation is also very good to push you in that creative mode. And more importantly, music. Music is the big one for me. I need background music to write. It puts me in the perfect mood and inserts me into the world. Good background music is key to block out the outside noise and focus on the page. On my case, my writing screen and my keyboard. So yeah, this is a bit longer than I thought it would be, but I just wanted to express all of the things that I learned myself when I started writing, like just this new hobby that I got that I just love to do. And now to talk about what I'm writing, I am writing fan fiction and I'm writing about Attack on Titan. Now, if you are new to my channel, maybe that doesn't make any sense to you, but if you are old on my channel, you know that's mainly the thing that I talked about, that I used to talk about. And I feel like I was very disappointed how it ended, like most people were, but specifically because there's a lot of plot threads that just got forgotten and not talked about, and I wanted to solve them. This is my cat. Thank you for joining me, Felix. Yeah. Okay, you're hungry? I can't take you out of this thing. Oh, anyways, I'm gonna just keep me out in the diner. We have no footage of this, but I'm grabbing him because I don't know what he's crying. Anyways, I wrote it because don't bite my headphones. Excuse me. Okay, this is not good. Just to end, I wrote it because I wanted to solve those plot threads, and I had my end in mind, so that's why I guess it was easy to plan things, and I really like planning things. So yeah, I made a website to put my Attack on Titan fanfiction like ending story, and I know a lot of people already did something like this, like, but it was a bit after I started doing it, so I guess I can claim it like I was the first. And I know my story is vastly different from everything else that people are doing out there. If you read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And yeah, so I'm gonna just leave it. If you're interested in my story, I guess you should know basic things about Attack on Titan. And there's a lot of spoilers about how it ends, officially. But again, it's a story, and I am very proud of it. And I wanted to talk about the whole process. Because I feel like I learned so much about writing in this, and learned just how to organize things. It's something that I love to do, is organize. And again, I like to talk about being creative and dealing with blocks and just how to organize, how not to basically give up. So that's my message, I guess. I know sometimes that there were a few times I want to give up on this, but when I think about the amount that I achieved, like as a writer, I wrote a lot. There's a lot of story, a lot of fun scenes that I got to plan, and I wanted to do this with my own story eventually when I finish this. Probably, I don't know where I'm going after this, but it was just so much fun, and I hope this video helps others. And yeah, I really enjoy doing it. So I'm gonna leave a link to the food and my cat. Oh, it's here. Oh, you're here. Okay, I'm gonna feed you later. So yeah, that's it, guys, and I'll leave a link and a few links, I guess, and I'll see you in the next video. are you doing up there? Come down. Yeah? Come on. Okay, start here. Oh, no, no. Okay, bye.